Hello and good morning. Good to see you all today. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games. I am here as usual for the next hour on Wednesday, our last Wednesday in August 27th. We're kind of hopefully wrapping up the summer in St. Louis. It's been a brutally hot summer, but the last week has been quite lovely. So hopefully this continues and just eases into a gentle fall. We'll see. I got outside this weekend a little bit. Did some disc golf. Went to the farmers market yesterday, and played some disc golf over the weekend. Had a nice round, and went to a friend's Low Country Boil. Two friends have an annual tradition where they host, or a couple of friends really host a Low Country Boil. If you're not familiar with this, it's where they boil a lot of seafood mostly, and then they dump it on a long table for people to scramble and eat with their hands. And just a good time. It's rare that you get kind of messy when you eat, and so it's kind of neat to get messy together in this boil. So Garrett is intrigued by the SM Cup, which could mean a lot of different things. It's a little bit of a misnomer here, Garrett. I'll explain why, and it'll come up. It actually comes up on tomorrow's episode of the Positively Board Gaming Podcast, but I'll spoil it right now. We've been trying to use fewer plastics as related to our food. I know it's probably too late for any of us with microplastics, but maybe the little things will make a little difference. So Megan got some metal cups, and she happened to find a cup that had SM on it, like Stonemaier Games. It actually stands for Simple Modern, but it happens to be the same SM that we use here at Stonemaier Games. And so I have a nice SM cup, nice metal cup, nice grippy surface on the outside from Simple Modern, and I've been enjoying drinking out of it. So if you have seen me for years on camera drinking out of a giant plastic cup that I've had for a long, long time, I now have a metal cup and will hopefully have a few less microplastics in my system as a result. Looks like Anthony got to try disc golf over the weekend. That's awesome, Anthony. Thanks for giving it a try. He says, we did top golf and mini golf. What a golf week. That's a lot of different types of golf in one week, for sure. I was driving. We went to Kansas City briefly over the weekend and came back, and we noticed we actually passed by a top golf, and we also passed by a golf course that had disc golf baskets on the golf course as well. I've seen that on TV, but I don't think seen that in real life, where there's an active golf course that is also an active disc golf course. I wonder how they figure out maybe they play at the same time. I don't know. Austin says, I thought the SM Cup was going to be your new competition game show. It does sound a little bit like that. The new competition show is related to Vantage. So Vantage, I have the Vantage update over here on my other screen. Since a Vantage update last week, and one of the things I'm going to try is I've been inspired by the show Destination X, and I'm going to try to host a reality competition style show on our YouTube channel, on StreamYard, what I'm using right now, set in the world of Vantage. And I have an idea of when I think the first date for it will be. I think it'll be somewhat spur of the moment based on who is available at that time. So if anyone signed up to potentially be on that, you might get an email in a couple of days, and the first few people to sign on will be the first contestants for this little experiment. I have no idea how it'll go. I mean, I've designed it, but it's one of the things that I can't really test until I actually test it and see how it actually works. So it might be a little bit of an experiment. It might completely flop. Either way, I'll probably post the video after it's done. Dyson Donuts is relating to my comment about microplastics. They say, as a parent, I'm realizing everything has microplastics in it, and I'm horrified, but we can't get away from it. Small changes, I guess. Exactly, yeah. Small changes, maybe they'll make a tiny difference. I think sometimes those small changes add up. Joshua says, speaking of disc golf, last weekend's professional game was a great watch. I totally agree. Yeah, I wasn't able to watch the full tournament or even the full recap, but from what I saw, it was both for the men's and the women's tournament at Idlewild, another tournament that we sponsored. It looked pretty awesome. Monkey Butler Labs says, how big is the group that you go to Gamers Ranch with? I was hoping to book something there with a friend group, but I don't think we could hit 20 people, and it gets prohibitively expensive fast. I agree. It is pretty expensive. The Gamers Ranch, for those who don't know, it's a vacation property in the middle of Missouri. It's about 2 hours west of St. Louis that is filled with modern tabletop games, and not just like it is essentially a tabletop gamers paradise. And they also have a disc golf course that is awesome, like a legitimate disc golf course that you just walk out the door and you are on the course, and a lake, so it's great to go to when the weather's warm. There's a lot of stuff to do, but mainly focused on gaming. Also, a beautiful kitchen, a lot of beds. I usually push that 20-person limit a little bit, and it might even go a little bit over that limit. But I think if you got a dozen people together, and maybe have the people who want their own room, because some people will have to share rooms, but people who have their own room might try to get them to pay a little bit more than those who are willing to share a room, then I think you could probably pull it off pretty well. Yeah, because there are a number of shared rooms. I don't remember exactly how many off the top of my head. Garrett says, have you seen or played foot golf? Garrett says, I played on a golf course. Oh, but it is played on a golf course, but you swing by kicking a soccer ball, you putt into a giant hole. It sounds awesome. I've heard of it. I haven't tried it. When I was little and I'd go to the beach in North Carolina with my family, I would often create little soccer, I guess, foot golf. But I called it like sand soccer golf at the time. I would create little courses in the sand that you kick a soccer ball into and try to get it into a certain hole. So I know that I enjoy this sport already, but I haven't tried it in person yet. I played soccer all throughout my life. In fact, I might play this weekend if I can. No, I'm playing pickleball this weekend. This is a pickleball weekend. Steve says, speaking of things wrapped in plastic wrappers, what's your chocolate of the day? What is my treat of the day? Well, I was going to mention one of my treats of the day is that I have this fancy new cup. That's fun. Actually, I went to the farmer's market yesterday, Steve, at Tower Grove Farmer's Market here in St. Louis. They have a Tuesday market in addition to a Saturday market. And I picked up a chocolate chip cookie that is literally the size of my face. It is the widest chocolate chip cookie that I've ever seen. And so I ate some of it yesterday, but I still have a lot of it left over today. We got it from Eat Outside Catering. And it's also a vegan chocolate chip cookie, so it's healthy. I'm saying that somewhat with a smile on my face because it's not entirely healthy just because it's vegan. Probably not even any more healthy than a non-vegan chocolate chip cookie, but it's very good. Julio says that he played Vantage with his best friend, a non-co-op player, and he said this is his favorite Stonemaier game and probably the best of 2025. Well, thank you so much for saying that, Julio. I'm glad that your friend really enjoyed the experience, despite not gravitating towards co-op games in general. I try to hit that sweet spot between, in terms of player agency in Vantage, and that you can really do, you personally can do whatever you want. No one else can control what you can do, but there are reasons for you to actively communicate, to listen to mechanically help or ask for help from other players. Try to include all of that in the game. Try to hit the sweet spot between the two. So perhaps I should talk about that a little bit more in general when I am marketing the game, that people who don't normally like cooperative games might enjoy Vantage a little bit more than they expect. Maybe we'll see. Chad says, I've been solo playing my vast collection of Marvel United, really enjoying trying many combos of different heroes and villains. Have you ever dived deep into a game with many interchangeable aspects? Let's see if I have. Many interchangeable aspects. The closest I can think of off the top of my head is Magic the Gathering, which does have a lot of different ways that you can compile decks. Like there was a time where I got really way into building decks of Magic the Gathering when I could have been using all that creative space to design games. I was having fun with it, which is okay, but I wish I'd used a little bit more of that time to work on and creating something that would last. But that's the closest that I think I've gotten. But that's a fun question for anyone else. Have you ever deep dived into a game with many interchangeable aspects? Here's Carly saying, Vantage is so great. Thank you, Carly. I have ADHD, so I struggle to sit still 90 minutes for a game, and Vantage can go over 90 minutes. The first time I played Vantage, we played for 4 hours. I could have kept going. Wow, that's a high compliment to hear for anyone who struggles to sit still for 90 minutes. And I could definitely relate to that, Carly. I generally bounce off games that go over like 2.5 or 3 hours. And even with Vantage, I am fine at any. Even though there are sessions that have gone long for me. I'm fine saying, hey, I've played this for an hour. I've had a great time. That's how long I wanted to play this game right now, and then I walk away from it. But I'm so glad to hear that you're having fun with it. Thanks for sharing that. The other Vantage news here, I need to share this on my other screen here. So there was a Vantage newsletter that I sent last week. I think I also sent the Scythe and Expeditions newsletter recently. And next week, stay tuned, because next week is the Wormspan Dragon Academy reveal, as well as talking about our version of the Tokaido Duo and a small surprise product that I haven't talked about at all. But for Vantage news, I sent an update last week, and here is so Destination Vantage, talking about that there. But something that I mentioned several times, but I haven't ever said it in a Vantage newsletter, is the idea that you can play with your pets now. You can go on a Vantage adventure with your pets, past, present, or future pets. Like Walter is my current cat. He was buddies for a long time with Biddy, who passed away a couple years ago. And so I can now go on adventures with Walter and Biddy, or one of the two. I think the balance works best if you just have one pet with you. You start the game with them. But we have a template linked here in the newsletter where you can make your own pet based on our template. You give them their own little boost power. You name them. You decide which of the 6 skill types in Vantage they are the most likely to give you a little morale boost as a result of. Biddy, I gave the engage power because he was very talkative, very engaging, very curious. Walter can be a little feisty boy. He isn't a mean cat, but he would often he played rough with Biddy, and so he got the overpower skill type here. But hey, I've had a blast using that, and I've heard that people even using it as a way to bring people into the Vantage world. Like if you're playing with friends, you might surprise them by making a pet card for their pet, or if you are playing with a partner who's maybe a little hesitant to play, or just that you think they might enjoy it, you can add your pet to the game that way. I feel like I'm rambling here. I'm going over time, but here Connor says, not really a question, but wanted a shout out to how amazing of a company you are and how much we appreciate your support of the community. Thank you, Connor. I appreciate you saying that. I feel like that we at Stonemaier Games can always do better to support you and be kind to you and generous to you. But we are trying. And so I appreciate you affirming that. Thank you. Oh, Dyson Donuts also in St. Louis. All right, awesome. And a fellow St. Louisian, and have never heard of this gaming ranch. Yeah, look up. If you're looking up right now, if you search like Gaming Ranch, Missouri, the owner David is incredible. Like this is something that this is not his core business. He's been very successful in another way, and so he has really invested a lot into making this a gamer's paradise. It is really, really amazing. Especially, and I will say, I'll emphasize this, especially if you also like disc golf, which is a giant dexterity game, because it is a rare pleasure to be able to just walk out the door and be on a disc golf course right away. It means that you can play a few baskets and then come back inside if you want. It means you can play the whole course as often as you want. It's really cool. Oh, here's my mom talking about sand soccer golf. Thanks, Mom. I know you've had some happy memories watching us play that as well on the beach. Okay, Mark says, just curious, I just saw the BGG page for a Vantage mid-level spoiler. What prompted creating a separate page for it? Good question, Mark. And I'll say the name of it in case anyone wants to find it. I'll say it this way. If you have opened the spoiler pack in Vantage, there is now a listing on BoardGameGeek for something called Skirm, S-K-I-R-M. Mark, there are 2 reasons that I did this. One is for anyone who has opened that pack, they now own that thing, and they can now note that they own it on BoardGameGeek. I know a lot of people like to do that, or to list their plays. And the second reason is to have a place for questions for that thing, because even though it's part of Vantage, it's also its own thing in some ways. And so I thought it might be better to have its own place where people can ask questions about it. Paul says, "What's your T-shirt? I love everything about Norway. Apologies if you already mentioned, but I missed it. So no, Paul, happy to answer. No one's asked about it yet. This is a shirt that I got on my recent gaming cruise, the BGG at Sea cruise to Norway that I signed up for. This is Molde, one of the towns that we went to in Norway. There's a lovely, lovely little town. in Norway. Let's see if it was the first. It was the first town we went to. We went Molde, Olden, and then Haugesund, and we had a lovely time. Different experiences in each of these towns. Stuart says that his Kickstarter copy of Luthier, is that how you say it, arrived this past weekend, and I love it. Anything currently funding that you are excited about? Well, I'm actually probably going to play Luthier tonight. A friend of mine is, I think, bringing it to game night tonight. Do you think we can get through it in about 2 hours, Stuart? That's our typical game night time tonight. Anything currently funding that I am excited about? I don't know if I'm actually backing anything right at this moment, but I'll look it up. I'll let you know. Jamey says, do you anticipate adding more things to Vantage like the new pets variant? I would love to land with a weapon or another item, etc. Well, Jamey, that's a good question. By design, you are meant to land just as your character. There are built-in default ways to get the things that you are talking about very early in the game. I'd recommend, here's a minor spoiler, but I recommend taking some of the actions on your character card. But beyond the pets, probably not. I know people can always find other ways to make custom cards, but it can lead to some complications. And part of that is because Vantage is a very interconnected system. Like all the ways to gain things in Vantage are already built into Vantage. So the only really easy way to add something to the game is to say that you start with it either in your reserve or in your grid. I think the pets are a good way of towing that line and finding the right balance. It might change over time. I wasn't anticipating letting people add their pets to Vantage. And one of the things that helps with Vantage is that the cards are never shuffled. So you don't need a specific card stock to add a just for fun fan-made card to Vantage. Katie says, Wormspan Dragon Academy. This is indeed an expansion. This is the expansion to Wormspan, Katie. And yeah, next week is when we reveal what it is, everything about it. You'll see the rule book, you'll see all the components. I'm very excited to showcase that. And then just a little bit later, we're aiming for September 10th is when it will launch on our web store, and then you can have it in your hands within a week or two. So all within the next month, you will learn about this expansion, and you can actually be playing Wormspan with it. I'm very excited to show it to you in the very near future. Okay, Kickstarter has now loaded. Let's see if I've backed anything. I am backing Jackpot Set the Reel. This is actually, I for a while thought about trying to find a way to build the idea of a slot machine into a tabletop game, like a slot machine mechanism into a tabletop game. And it looks like the game hasn't been received all that well on Kickstarter. I don't exactly know why, so maybe it's good that I didn't pursue this particular mechanism, but I'm still excited to try it out. I'm intrigued by how, if the designer figured out a way to bring in the slot machine concept into a tabletop game. So yeah, I'm backing that one right now. Garrett mentions Unmatched as a very interchangeable game that he's gone deep into. Julio says, I agree with advertising the player agency in Vantage. When I pulled out the game, I could tell he wasn't excited, but once he realized the freedom of what he could do, he didn't want to stop playing. I appreciate that feedback, Julio, and I'll try to emphasize that a little bit more. Julio says, we played for 3.5 hours. Austin says, how do board game publishers decide on the approximate runtime they print on the box? When my friends play games, we usually go longer than the listed playtime. I would say that's fairly common, Austin. I could say how we do it. The way I do it is whenever I ask playtesters, blind playtesters, to report the data for their playtest, one of the data points I ask for is I ask them for, and actually, let me pause real quick, Austin. I should have started out with this. Last week I had an audio issue. Are you all hearing me okay today? Is the audio working well? I haven't really changed anything other than trying to plug in the cords a little bit better. Let me know if the audio is not good. Anyway, Austin, sorry for the interruption. So when we ask for that data, one of the data points I asked for is for them to tell me the playing time that includes setup, playing the game, and tear down. So I want the playing time to include all of that in the total playing time, which gives me a pretty somewhat padded number, because I think maybe when most people think about playing time, they think of the actual time of actually just playing the game, not the setup and cleanup. Even then, and so I use that number and essentially an average of that number put on our box. If like the majority of playtesters say that the playing time plus setup plus cleanup is around 90 minutes, I'll put around 90 minutes on the box. Yeah, that's how I do it. Other publishers probably do it differently, though. Brad says, have Walter and Biddy gone on their own adventure in Vantage and not had one of the starting characters with them? They have, Brad. That's a good question. Little spoiler, wink or hint there, but they have indeed. Oh, Julio says, we even completed a few destinies. That's interesting, Julio. Technically, you only need to complete one destiny, and then you can read the entry for that destiny whenever you want to. You don't have to read that right away, and then the game ends. But it sounds like you completed multiple destinies, and then maybe chose one of them to read the entry for, which is totally fine. I think that's actually a mistake that some people have made, where they complete the destiny and then they immediately read the thing in the storybook and end the game, even if they weren't ready to end it. But that choice is up to you. I believe the phrasing on the card is like, you may read this passage when you are ready, or something to that effect. But yeah, you can complete a destiny and continue to play. It's just that you can't complete a destiny. The game will end when you read the entry associated with that destiny after you've completed. Chad says, I was so excited to see more Jakob artwork. That was in the recent Scythe and Expeditions update. If Jakob was ever to approach me with a game based on a new world he created that has nothing to do with the 1920 plus world, would you take on that challenge? He and I have talked about this over the years, and because he has started to dabble, or over the years he has dabbled in other worlds. I'm open to it. I'm certainly open to it, but it would have to be a world that really, really piqued my curiosity, and where I had what I thought was not just a good idea, but where I maybe put a little bit of work into it and actually had a game that I was really excited to pursue that was working well on the tabletop. So possibly. Demishadow23 says, when developing Vantage, did you know going in how many cards it would end up with? I did not know. I had no idea. And if not, when in the process did you know, and what made you finally call and say that's the final card count? Well, with the smaller cards, the standard card size, I didn't really ever give myself that limit. I continued to add things until I thought it had all the things that the game needed, even until the very, very end of the design process. However, for the large cards, which are very expensive to print, that's why I printed them double-sided with one location on both sides of most of those cards. Those, at a certain point, I capped. I said, this is how many of these cards we'll have, both for the expense of them and because I wanted a single sequential line of numbers throughout the entire game. And so I knew I needed to cap that so that I knew where to start the numbering for the smaller cards. There are certainly other ways that I could have done that. But it was nice to give myself, I think it was good for me to give myself and us at Stonemaier Games that limit, because I probably would have continued to add locations to the game if I hadn't done that. Misery Gets 36 also asked about the shirt. Here, I'll show the shirt here. Yes, this is a shirt that I got on the Norway gaming cruise that I recently went on. Jonathan says, I received my copy of Vantage just in time for our annual family vacation. And I will say, as I'm reading Jonathan's comment, that the full retail release for Vantage, including the online retailers who have not been able to release it yet, happens this Friday. So if you pre-ordered it from a online store, they can finally ship it to you starting this Friday. Jonathan says, we took it on a road trip. The family loved it and kept asking for it to come back to the table. That's saying a lot, because my extended family has a very different views on the types of games they usually want to play. I can relate to that with my extended family as well. Kudos to the Stonemaier teams for producing something that brings many people to the table and does exactly what it sets out to do, bring joy to our table. That was my goal in spending 8 years personally working on this game, Jonathan, and I'm so glad it brought some joy to your table during your family vacation. Andy says, I know you said Vantage is complete, but while playing it at the weekend, I thought it'd be great to have an expansion sequel that features the same world at a different point in the world's time. Andy, my general answer to that is maybe it's already there. Maybe it's there. Yeah. Keep exploring. See what you find. Dieter says he's excited for the pre-orders for the German version of Vantage, which I think Forland is doing that. I think there might be a Korean pre-order at some point as well. George says, is there any plan to release a full set of Skirm cards, or should I just buy 100 or so full copies of Vantage to try to get them all? Please don't do that. That definitely is not the intent. George, that is a bit of a spoiler question. I don't want to go too deep into it. My quick answer is, if there is enough interest in that, I'm happy to do that. I suspect that, oh wow, got some water. I keep touching my desk and like getting wet, and I'm like, where is this coming from? I must have spilled some water. If there's enough interest in that, I'm happy to do it, George. I doubt there will be, but I'm happy to do that if that is possible. Thank you all for confirming that the audio sounds good today. Andy says, I spent the weekend with a bunch of friends playing games, and Vantage was definitely the game of the weekend. Played half a dozen times, and there were still people that didn't get a chance to play. That sounds like a fun group to play games with in general, Andy, and I'm glad you had a whole weekend to do that, and I'm glad that that Vantage was part of it. Eric says, I have a question about expanding the Hive, the Apiary expansion. I heard stories that the expansion fits perfectly in the core box of the base game. Is that true? Not only is that true, Eric, but I would say that we designed the expansion specifically to fit into the original insert for Apiary. That was a design constraint that we had for the game, for the expansion design, and it is true. Jay Zargo says, can you also pass on reading the Destiny's entry for the Destiny you get for filling a player grid? Absolutely, yeah. For any Destiny, you can complete it, and then you choose when you are ready to read it. Actually, the one that you're talking about is worded a little bit differently, because that one actually kind of has a timer for the game. That one's maybe a little bit more nebulous, but the intent certainly is that that you end the game on your own terms, even after you've completed the Destiny. Okay, Julio says that he chose to keep going. He wanted to keep going in that same adventure. Morgan says, I recently purchased Viticulture Essential Edition. Thank you, Morgan, for getting that. I'm looking forward to learning and playing the game that has started it all for Stonemaier Games. Any hints or suggestions to get started? To get started, well, I would definitely recommend starting just with Viticulture Essential. Sometimes people say, oh, you got to add in Tuscany. Please don't add in Tuscany for your first play of Viticulture. I really highly recommend against doing that. So that's the main thing. Just play with Viticulture, the core game. I would also recommend, if you're teaching other people, this is mainly a teaching tip, to just do it season by season. To just say, okay, here's what we're doing in the spring. Let's do it. And here's what we're doing, and complete that. And then move on to the summer. Do the thing in the summer, learn about it, talk about it for a minute, and do it. And then when you're done with that, move on to the fall. I think teaching it step by step like that through 1 year. And after that, some people decide to reset the game and start over. But most of the time, it's a very rewarding game. It doesn't punish you for making bad decisions early in the game. So most people just keep playing after that. But that is my recommended teaching method for Viticulture, and maybe even my recommended learning method too. Just like play through the spring and then learn how summer works, and do that as well. Dyson Donut says, are there any new games you played recently that have kept your attention and surprised you with how fun they are? Looking for new recommendations. We've been playing Wingspan nonstop and Finspan. I would certainly recommend those two for that purpose. I mean, the one that has gotten to my table multiple times recently has been Duel for Middle Earth, the 2-player Seven Wonders Duel spin-off / sequel set in Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings. I've gotten that to the table multiple times recently and have really, really enjoyed it. Mark says, when you were starting out as a board game designer back in 2012, and that is when I started out as trying to get published. I've been designing games since I was like 8 years old. Did you consider pitching Viticulture to a publisher back then, or you went straight to self-publishing? I started working on Viticulture specifically because I was fascinated by Kickstarter and wanted to put a game on Kickstarter. So that was the goal from the very beginning of Viticulture. I mentioned in the subject line of today's live cast, I mentioned two other things other than the Stonemaier Games cup that I've held up a few times and probably spilled on my desk. I mentioned prototypes. There has been a prototype that we have received that I've played multiple times recently and really enjoyed it. I don't exactly know yet if we're going to publish it, but I just wanted to throw that out there, that every now and then we do accept a prototype and we play it and really consider it to see if it's a good fit for us. And it's a pretty good one. I enjoy the process, and I enjoy going back and forth with the designer a little bit to learn about some of the design decisions they've made and see how they respond to my feedback. And the other thing is The Mole. Some of you have recommended that I watch the reality competition show called The Mole. and I recently finished watching. Really, we zipped through season 2 on Netflix of the U.S. version of The Mole, and I really enjoyed it. It is kind of what I want from the traders. I want, as an audience member, to not know who at least one of the traders is. In The Mole, you don't know who the mole is as you're watching. So I really enjoyed that. And we finished it, and I filmed a video about my perspective on the game design of The Mole that should go live this Saturday. Chad says, was there anything you wanted to add to Vantage just to realize it would be way too much to include? Any snowballing effects? I mean, most everything that I truly wanted to add to Vantage, I put in Vantage. It's probably in there. I maybe toned it back. Well, I don't even know if I toned it back. I mean, there's so many little rabbit holes in Vantage that you can go down. I mean, when you have 900 cards, 900 small cards in the game, or not small cards, standard size cards in the game, what is it to add one more card or two cards? I don't really think there is, Chad. Yeah, I can't think of anything specific that I held back from Vantage. There's a lot of stuff in there. Well, can you all hear Walter right now? Walter is talking. Walter, come on. Walter's my cat. He's yelling at something. Derek says, have you ever experienced a time during design or development when feedback compelled you to change a game in a way that significantly distanced itself from the UX, the user experience that you envisioned or intended to create? That I intended to create. I would say I mean, probably, but I would say it's far more common that the mechanisms that I've applied to a game or a theme or a world end up not being in line with the user experience that I intended to create. And I try to come back to that. So it's less of a matter of changing the game away from that experience and rather trying to keep the game steered towards the experience that I wanted to design. And that's a tough balance sometimes, because there are certain times where I'm like, oh, is this experience that I'm aiming for, is this even the right thing for the game? And usually, though, I have a pretty good idea of what I think is the right experience, or at least the experience that I'm aiming for the game. And it's just a matter of finding the right mechanisms to make it shine at the table and to meet that intended experience. I know that's a very vague answer, so let me think if there's anything specific that I can give you as I'm thinking about that. Anything fairly recent. Scythe isn't all that recent. Scythe is 10 years in at this point, but or almost 10 years. But with Scythe, some of the early versions of Scythe were very different than the final version. Like there was a very early version that I envisioned being much more similar to Dead of Winter, where I was like, oh, I want to focus on these different people. I want to focus really, really strongly on the people. And I ended up moving very far away from that. It was also much more of a combat game at one point. Moved away from that too. So, but the key with Scythe is I always came back to the art and looking at the art and trying to capture in the game mechanically how I felt when I was looking at the art, because the art inside is very rarely about war. It's little kind of vignette, they're like post-war vignettes of average everyday life where war has happened somewhere. There's like a machine of war in someone's backyard, but it's being used for something different than war, or it's not being used at all. And that's what drew me into Scythe originally. And so trying to capture that feeling inside, and I don't even know if I fully did that, but that helped me remind me that, oh, this isn't a war game. This isn't even necessarily really a game about the people in this world, even though the people are featured in that art. Yeah. Austin says the roof isn't leaking from hurricane damage, is it? Yeah, I hope not. No. Yeah. Tornado damage for us here in St. Louis. Ivan says, will you go to Essen Spiel this year? Stonemaier Games will go to Essen, but I won't personally be there. Jonathan says he went to a card store to pick up some things and got sold on Vantage. That's great. Thanks, Jonathan, for at least being open to that. Ended up playing all weekend with friends and even got my wife, who isn't a big fan of board games, to play for hours. Thank you so much. You all are being so kind today about Vantage. it makes me really happy that you're enjoying the game. And I know it's okay if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I didn't like Vantage that much. It's okay if you speak up or don't speak up. That's totally fine too. I know it's not for everybody, but for those of you who are enjoying it, that means a lot to me. And thank you for sharing that. Just as it sounds like you're back on normal schedule for Positively Board Gaming. Hopefully this means Mitchell is doing well. Mitchell, my podcast host for Positively Board Gaming, is feeling better. And we were able to record yesterday, and we'll even do another episode on Friday that will go live next Thursday. He is feeling better. Thanks for asking about that, Jeff. So what other topics am I? So things that I'm watching recently, I mentioned The Mole. Also really enjoyed the latest episode of Game Changer, which was called Change Gamer or Samalema Ding Dong. This is on dropout.tv, which if you're watching this as someone who loves games and also potentially loves reality competition shows, I really, really highly recommend subscribing to dropout.tv for just a month and giving it a try. Try a couple different shows and see what fits for you. I am so glad that I now subscribe to it because it's so much fun. We're watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the latest season of it. And I recently finished reading a really solid, I would say maybe young adult, but slightly over young adult, maybe college age, fantasy book called Heir of Storms. Heir as in H-E-I-R of Storms. Really enjoyed that. Wrote about it on my personal blog the other day. Again, next week is kind of the big reveal week. And I will say that the reveals will happen starting next Tuesday. I will go live as normal for a live cast next Wednesday, September 3rd. But the reveal of Wormspan Dragon Academy and our version of Tokaido Duo, that will happen on September 2nd through those newsletters. So if you want to be the first to get the news about Wormspan, make sure to subscribe to the World of Wormspan newsletter. Same with Tokaido. If you want to be the first to get that news, make sure to subscribe to the Tokaido newsletter. It's okay if you unsubscribe the next day. No worries at all there. And also, I'll include some links in next week's livecast when I start talking about those and talk about the surprise thing as well. The other content that I made recently, I did last week when Mitchell was out of commission, I did a Positively Board Game episode where I talked about what's in my disc golf bag. So if you're a disc golf player and are curious about the types of things that are in my disc golf bag, I have an episode about that. Also did a video about the $1 Million Secret, that reality competition show. And my top 10 video, it turned out into a top 12 video, was about my favorite mechanisms in Stonemaier Games over the last 5 years. Okay, I do have a question for you all. Let me see if there's any other questions, and then I have a question for you. Grayson Swan says, any word on the Vantage card errata pack? Now, I don't think I had any. There's no real updates about it right now. We're making it. We're making that pack, and I'll let you know probably mid-October is when that'll be ready. It's just a little update pack. It doesn't impede anyone. So please don't not play Vantage because you don't have the update pack. There are a few little things that are going to be adjusted, but it does not get in the way of playing the game at all. You probably won't even notice. And if you do notice, you can just check the errata on our website or check on RulePop to see. Jared says you had kind words about Earthborn's Hub World Eidolon. I try to have kind words about every game that I play. So I don't want that is my goal when I talk about games on our YouTube channel. Jared says, what do you think of what Plaid Hat is doing with Ashes? What is your position on Stonemaier publishing an expandable non-trading card game? Now, Jared, I wrote about this a little while ago in terms of print-on-demand publishing. I think it's a really interesting thing that Ashes is doing. I talked about it, I think, earlier in the spring when I learned about Fireforge, I think is what the press is called, where it's a US-based print-on-demand a printer. And what Plaid Hat is doing, what Jared's referring to, for those who don't know, is that they are saying, we are no longer going to print giant print runs of our old stuff. We are going to let it go out of stock for mass printing, but you can still buy those packs print on demand using a consistent card stock that will use consistently across printers. I think that's really cool. I think that's really, really cool. I think that's a great way to leave something to keep something in print. Here's Walter. What are you talking about? So yeah, I think that's really cool, Jared. Curious if anyone else has thoughts about that. Demi Shadow. So here's Walter over here. He was yelling and something. He probably wanted to go outside. It's a very nice day. Oh, Leona is also playing Vantage every day. That's awesome, Leona. Demi Shadow says, Strange New Worlds has been awesome. Wish they could make a season quicker than every 2 years. Have you been watching Foundation and Alien Earth? I still haven't started Alien Earth. I ended up bouncing away from Foundation a little bit, and now Megan just watches it and lets me know what happens. I have I have really too many shows to watch at night, like longer shows, and we're now running out of half-hour short shows to watch for lunch. So that's where we are right now with our shows. Also says, a while back you did a video on what game should I design next and showed some of your ideas. Did you end up working on one of those that people seem to resonate with? I have a few of those that I am bouncing around, maybe in the brainstorming stage, I'll say. Yeah. Julio says that he also enjoyed the What's in My Bag episode. I like seeing people talk about things they're passionate about, and it was cool to hear the stories for the disc. Thanks, Julio. Yeah, I'm glad maybe you found it a little bit relatable, even if for those who don't play disc golf. Mark says, if anyone loves super nerdy quiz shows, there's one called Only Connect that you can find some episodes on YouTube. It's super nerd level. They have a connection wall that makes New York Times look like a game for children. Thanks for that recommendation, Mark. Leona says, have you started watching any new anime? I did watch, I know it's not an anime or really all that new at this point, but I did watch K-pop Demon Hunters recently and enjoyed that. And I want to watch Scavenger's Reign. A lot of people said that it reminds them of Vantage a little bit, so I want to watch that one. Oh, Grayson said that the Twisted Metal is around half an hour. Oh, that's good to know. I assumed that was like a full-length 45 to 60-minute show, but maybe I'll have to try that if it's just a half hour. And that's my length for my lunch. Dieter says, is there any chance to see a co-op project with you and Andrew Navarro? I highly doubt it, because they like Andrew is a game designer who also runs his own publishing company. I'm a game designer who runs my own publishing company. So we're probably just going to focus on our own. Contractually, I can only design games that Stonemaier Games will publish. And Andrew probably has the same philosophy, even if it isn't in his contract. But he's a very nice guy, and I love seeing the things that he's creating. I think their art direction in particular is really, really strong at Earthborn Games. What was the other thing I wanted to bring up? Oh, yeah, my question of the day. So I mentioned Dropout.tv and Game Changer. And one of the things that I think is really, really cool about Game Changer that I think I want to write an article about if I can figure out exactly the angle to approach it with. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. Very briefly, Game Changer is a game show on Dropout.tv where the rules of the game are just completely different every episode. And yes, there are some exceptions to that where they do like sequel episodes, but the core idea is that 3 contestants show up and have no idea what the game is, and they learn the game while they play. And they often involve new sets, completely new mechanisms every time. It's really impressive that they come up with so many games. And the thing in particular that I think is really cool is that some of the games go over so well that they spin them off to become their own actual game show, which I think is great, because there are certainly episodes of Game Changer that I've watched where I was like, oh, I would watch many more episodes of this. For example, Make Some Noise. It's it's essentially just improv, but with some really good prompts that has become its own show. Very recently, there's one that I'm forgetting, but the very recent one was Crowd Work. I think it's called Crowd Work, where they had an episode of Game Changer where they brought on 3 comedians who are very good at doing crowd work, and everyone in the audience had a shirt that had a phrase on it that said like something interesting about that person. Like mine could say, I'm a game designer, and if the comedian wants to like kind of riff on that and joke about that and talk back and forth with me about that and make a bit about it, they can do that because they can see it on my shirt. And I was like, oh, this is a really clever way to do crowd work in a comedian type setting. Anyway, they've spun this off into their own show called Crowd Work. And I was like, I was really happy to see that, because as I was watching that episode of Game Changer, I was like, oh, I would definitely watch this series if they made a series about it. Anyway, come back to the blog post that I'm thinking about. I I love that they are starting to use or are using Game Changer as a testing ground for concepts for shows for Dropout.tv. And I'm curious if you see a corollary between that, the idea of a testing ground that could become something more, and anything in the game design community and game design world. I think my initial impression was like playtesting, playtesting in general. But playtesting is a little bit different. Like when you're playtesting something, it's you have essentially decided that you're probably going to make something already. That's the thing that you're making. You're not really testing something to spin off into something else. It is the thing that you are testing. So yeah, anyway, long story short, that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that for a potential blog post. Nick says, have you seen Leviathan, the animated Leviathan? It's based on a book, but it's basically like Scythe. I have not seen that, Nick. I'll have to check that one out. Mark says, related to the Game Changer is the show Taskmaster, which is also similar. He says, it's also so incredible at taking a bunch of people I don't know and over 10 episodes just falling in love with them. That is a neat element of actually both of the two, because in Taskmaster, you get multiple episodes with the same people. In Game Changer, and really the shows on Dropout in general, there are many people that appear on multiple shows at multiple times. So you're not falling for their character. Well, yeah, you're falling for these people. You're like, oh, I feel like I know these people now, these friends, because I've watched them do multiple things. I've seen their personality emerge in different ways on different shows on Dropout TV. Torres says, I love how much fun Sam was having. It was really neat to see how much fun and how quick he was at figuring out the puzzles in the last episode. Okay, so Garrett comes back to the Garrett, I'm glad you brought this up again, because I was wondering if I could connect the two in a blog post. Garrett mentions game jams, which is something that Garrett mentioned last week. Is the game jam concept, is that what Game Changer is, and how it relates to gaming? And I think you might have a good point there, Garrett. Andy says that Vantage kind of has Game Changer vibes to do it in some ways. The spoiler pack content could totally become a new game. That's true. That's true. One other corollary, actually, I had thinking about this in real time, is Magic the Gathering did a set many years ago called, some of you will let me know the right term. I'm thinking Time Warp, but Time Spiral, where they played around with time as a mechanism in a few different ways. And one of the sets they did was they pretended that there were a bunch of different futures of Magic the Gathering, and they made cards from future sets that didn't exist, and they jammed them all into one set, which I thought was brilliant, because they were essentially testing a bunch of different types of cards that could exist someday, could be a part of an actual future world or future set, new mechanisms, new keywords, things like that. They put them all in the one set and got to test it all in one set, which I thought was really exciting to play and really cool. I don't know if that works as well for not Magic the Gathering, for anything other than Magic the Gathering. But maybe it could. Joe says, maybe similar to when a game is popular and has spin-offs, like Azul and a variety of Azuls. That is true. I could see that comparison, where you put out a few different games and you're like, okay, this game did well. Let's make spin-offs of that game, sequels to that game. That does make sense, Joel. I like that. Sean says, I was thinking about game jams or the UFO 50 video game. I actually just watched a GDC talk about the UFO 50 video game. It features 50 indie games of various sizes that were kind of experimental. Feels like a good way for developers to test the waters. That's a great example, Sean. In fact, I should be taking notes here because you all are giving me so many great thoughts here. I'll mention Azul from Joe, Game Jams, Time Spiral, and now UFO 50. One of the things the developer said about UFO 50 that I thought was somewhat notable is that they wanted each of these games to be legitimate games. So they really did design 50 different games to put into this one game, which is pretty incredible. G-Money14 says that Grandpa Beck's Games just released an expansion for Skull King. I'm so pumped for it. I did hear that. I didn't know that it was now released, and I need to check that out because I love Skull King. I don't necessarily know if I need more stuff in Skull King. I only very recently added the White Whale and the Kraken, I believe, were the two cards that we added. So I'm still new to adding those cards to the game. But I love that game, and so I'm probably going to get that expansion at some point. Curve Games says, what do you think about cutting and pasting others' art for prototypes? I have a game in the BGG PnP contest and I want to add art to my cards. It's been themeless until now. Well, so in general for prototypes, I have no problem with any designer, including myself, like pulling random art offline and just throwing it into the cards as a temporary stopgap. It feels maybe a little bit different when there's a contest involved. That feels a little different to me to do that. And I don't exactly know why, but that even feels different to me than a designer submitting a game to me saying, hey, I have placeholder art that I just pulled offline from a few different artists because I think that this is like the style or the look of the world that I'm going for. That even to me is fine, but that's like a private interaction. But the PnP is feels a little bit different to me. I think what you maybe could do, no, I don't know. That's a lot harder. I think maybe the most you could do, or one way to consider it, it's totally, this decision is obviously up to you, but I oftentimes use game-icons.net for game icons, but you can also use it, you can just enlarge an icon and use it as a placeholder image. Of course, if you ever use those icons, some of them are able, you can actually use the actual icon in your game. You need to credit the graphic designer who made it or the artist who made it. But I think that might be a nice middle ground to do because people have put those on there for the purpose of other people using it for things like prototypes. Stuart says, how do you get rid of your games? Do you go through the effort to sell them to fellow gamers, offload them for cheap at game stores, or donate them, or a mix of all? So Stuart, the way that I do it specifically, this is very specific to me, but we host an annual event called the Stonemaier Games Design Day. And that is my time of the year to cull my game collection. And so at that time, I pull a bunch of games off my shelf. I get Megan's approval for those games to leave our collection. The metric is if I have not played this game in the last year, and I don't think I will play this game in the next year, I give it away to someone who hopefully will play it. And so I put all those games in a big box. I bring them to Design Day. And as people walk in the door for Design Day, I offer them a free game from my collection. So that is how I personally do it. I think there are lots of different ways. One way that my coworker Susanna does it, and I think that other people do it, is some game stores offer a consignment option where you can give them a game that you no longer want, and they can put it in a special like used game section. And if the game sells, I think maybe they get a cut of it, or just you get some store credit to use. I don't know exactly how that works, but I know that you aren't getting cash in exchange for it, but you're getting store credit in some way. Hey, William, good to hear from you. William, who has attended Design Day a few times, he says, have you heard of the board game called 504 by Friedman Freeze? I have. Or the game City of City Moons. That might be a slightly different name, but City Moons is in the title, and City is in the title, by Amabel Holland. In both players, the players make the game. They're like sandboxes. I've heard years ago about 504, and very recently, I think Shut Up and Sit Down did a very interesting video about the City Moons game that you're referring to, but I haven't played either of them. But William, I see the comparison that you're making to the game changer question that I asked about a second ago. Joe says something about a game that can be engaged with, and the game story changes from that feedback. I'm reminded of Blaseball, that players were actively changing the game. Yeah, that's true. That how the feedback itself can continue to shape the game. I can see that. Here we go. 6 Moons, City of 6 Moons. Thank you, William, for clarifying that. Ivan says, I know that you don't play video games very much, and I think you should check out Age of Empires 4. They went above and beyond to make 22 civilizations, all with a different playstyle. The last update includes the Macedonian dynasty, which obviously I'm very excited for being from Macedonia myself. This is Ivan speaking. Well, Ivan, I was actually just thinking about today how I have not played or talked about video games in quite a while, not since like Blueprints came out earlier this year. So maybe I will. The weather is really nice in St. Louis right now, so it might be a winter thing once it gets a little bit colder. But I appreciate the recommendation. Thank you. I will make note of it. Jose says, have you done a live stream of Vantage gameplay? I haven't done a live stream yet. I have done like a video where I just turned on the camera and played for about 45 minutes or so. And here's my thing about it, Jose, because I've thought about it. It would be very easy to do. It'd be good marketing for it. But I have found when I play Vantage solo, and I really do, like I love playing Vantage with other people, but it's an exception for me because I usually don't play games solo. When I play Vantage solo, it is a really chill experience where I'm kind of just off in my own world. Like I love it so much that I almost don't want to do it for entertainment's sake. I want to do it because I'm just having fun diving into the Vantage world and going on an adventure. So yeah, that's where I'm thinking about it right now. I might do it at some point in the future. But right now, when I play Vantage solo, it's kind of for me. I'm doing it for me rather than doing it for the purposes of entertaining others. Yeah, if that makes sense. Chris actually filmed a great video recently. Chris, remind me of the name of the video. But he talked about answering 20 questions about Vantage on Chris's YouTube channel. And I really appreciate you doing that, Chris. That was very kind of you to film a video about that. Austin says, since you mentioned it, have you gotten any further in blueprints yet? I have not. I think I got through like day 20 and I was like, this is what I've had a great time. This is what I wanted out of this experience. And I am now bumping into too many roadblocks that I am not excited to get past. So that's where I stopped, and I was okay with that. Yeah. Oh, Wendy actually, she says she got store credit from the whole game store auction. They did an auction similar to what I described to buy Vantage using that store credit. That's awesome, Wendy. G-Money14 says, an update on Skull King. Looks like they already sold out of the pre-sales. The retail release is in October. I see. Okay, thanks for clarifying about that. Curvecut says, I was going to say it's a great way to learn about your game when they're being play tested. It was the previous comment. Totally. Yeah, that's it's a fantastic way. It is like the way to learn how your game works. Absolutely. Christopher says, how does the Stonemaier Design Day work? Sounds like a trip that would be a great combination of fun and learning. So it's one day. It's a long day. It's hosted by us at a place in St. Louis called the Pieces Board Game Bar and Restaurant. And it's something that people sign up for and pay for in advance. The payment doesn't really cover the full expense. It's something that we heavily subsidize, but there's a small payment kind of commitment to signing up for it in advance. It's often sold out well in advance too. And we try to bring in new people every year if we can fit them in. But there are space limitations to Pieces Board Game Bar Cafe. But the idea of it is that some people that attend are designers who want to playtest their prototype with various people and to be there to learn from people playtesting their prototype. And some people come because they just want to playtest. They want to see what might exist in the future and to offer feedback on it, which I think is amazing. And so there's a little bit of both. And then the expense for the day comes from all the food and the drinks that Pieces provides for us as we are playing the games. Yeah, that's the general idea behind it. And I think we're coming up on our 10th or 11th year of hosting this now. Chris shares the link here if anyone. It's a long video link that involves a bunch of characters, but if anyone wants to check out Chris's YouTube channel to see the questions that he answers about Vantage, I thought it was a great video. I think that sums it up for this week. Yeah, thank you all for hanging out. As always, this was a delight to hang out with you and to chat about games. And thank you for your questions and your answers to these games. I hope the weather is as nice where you are as it is here in St. Louis today, and that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. I'm excited to share next week Wormspan Dragon Academy, the Tokaido Duo, and the little surprise that I hinted at. And today, if you want to come back to this YouTube channel at 3 o'clock Central St. Louis time, I will be playing Rolling Realms live, which I do enjoy playing live for entertainment's sake, for Edawa, Tokaido, and Potion Explosion. These 3 realms I'll be playing today on our YouTube channel at 3 o'clock St. Louis time. Chris reminds me that the channel is called Tabletop Express, where he had that video. And Joaquin says, thanks for all your time and content you put out. Your videos are a massive resource in design. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's why I make them, and I'm glad they're adding some value to you. Have a great day, great week. I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.